we've got 2 dead Americans now as a result of this.
I'm sorry, but it's the classic British thing of talking about politics in America, which, need I remind everybody listening, is not our country. We have no say in how it's run, but it's something that really gets British politicians excited. They talk more about things like gun crime in America and abortions in America than they do about policies in our own country. I'm going to say what I said at the start. In America, the people want their police to have guns. They want themselves to have guns. They regularly vote to keep these things in place. Anywhere in the world, if you intervene with a police officer whilst they're trying to arrest a criminal, there is the chance that you will get caught up in violence. We are very fortunate in this country that we do not have police officers who regularly use guns. But please, can we stop pretending that this is unusual or cruel or anything like that? If you try to stop a police officer doing their job and they feel threatened with violence, there is every chance that they might shoot you. That is just the reality of the situation. And perhaps it needs to be reinforced to British people because, if you go abroad and you try to behave that way, who knows what might happen? Do I think it's a good thing? No. I'm very happy we don't have police officers with guns here. But that's the reality of the situation. But I'm sure we'll keep on having the conversation about Americans and how bad they are with their guns in Britain, where we have no say over it, over and over and over again until both you and I are dead. So, yeah, let's keep it going.
That's it. Well, I thoroughly enjoyed your ding-dong with Christine this morning. I thought it was what the show is all about, because it's all about opinions. What's yours? 03444991000. Would you like to see ICE-type deportations in the UK? And would you take Trump over Starmer? My number is 03444991000. Text the word talking your message to 87222. The brilliant Benedict Spence will return imminently. Thank you for an excellent hour. It's been quite the conversation, hasn't it? So much more to get through. Next up, will we ever end the scourge of shoplifting? This is Talk Breakfast.
We understand that the Prime Minister and his team have all got burner phones, but
that's standard practice.
Yeah,
that's every time you go to China.
Was your phone bugged, do you believe, by the Chinese?
Well, I have some evidence that my phone was interfered with, possibly not by the Chinese. When I was in the Foreign Office, I haven't heard anything apart from what I've read in the press about the Chinese specifically.
You haven't asked the security services yourself?
I haven't, no.
You have a security detail. I mean, with the Met, surely someone could ask.
Across the UK on DAB+. on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Has the Prime Minister sold out Britain's national security for a few economic breadcrumbs? It's 7:28. This is Talk Breakfast, and here is a voice note from Sean.
Morning, Mark. Sean from Grimsby here. Seeing our glorious Prime Minister over there on the ponce of the dictator with China for some solar panels. No, it's actually quite pathetic. But nobody says it better than the dictator of China himself when he says, I prefer the Labour Party. Well, so you have to ask why. Maybe it's because the Labour Party are communists. If that's not a red flag, then I don't know what is.
Powerful words. Well, one aspect of communism is the tolerance of crime, and I've got some very concerning crime stories for you. First of all, Labour has freed nearly 500... Sorry, let's correct that. Let's not have fake news. Labour has freed nearly 50,000 criminals from jail early under its soft justice programme. New figures from the Ministry of Justice showed that almost 50,400... can I just put my teeth in today? 48,931 offenders were let out of prison onto the streets in the scheme's first year. The astonishing number covered releases under the programme launched by then Justice Secretary Shabana Mahmood, which allows criminals to be freed after serving just 40% of a sentence handed down by the court. Let's get reaction now from a former prison governor and a Reform UK advisor on issues of prison policy, Vanessa Frake. Good morning, Vanessa.
Morning, Mark. How are you?
I'm very well. Great to see you, and a belated Happy New Year. What do you make of this figure, 50,000 criminals released from jail early? It's not sending a great message to my viewers and listeners that you commit a crime and you serve 40% of your jail term.
Well, look, your listeners shouldn't be surprised if you go back to 2007, 2008, when Jack Straw was Home Secretary and later Justice Secretary. The then Labour government released over about 5 years 80,000 prisoners. In the first year, they released around 28,000. So we're double that now. But, you know, I think it's a worrying trend, one that all members of the public should be concerned with, because, you know, these people are being released far too soon, without support systems, without proper resettlement. And it's interesting that the MOJ hasn't yet released how many of that 50,000 have been recalled to prison for committing further crimes.
Indeed. I mean, what happens to someone that's committed a crime, let's say a burglary or a violent mugging, some sort of scenario like that? Well, what tends to happen if they get out early?
Well, it depends what their support systems are, whether they're drug addicts or addicted to alcohol, whether they're homeless, that sort of thing. And if they're released early and those set down resettlement procedures haven't been put in place, well, then their only option really is to return to crime. And, you know, it is a worrying trend, and it seems to be going on, and we're double what we were in 2007, 2008. So, you know, where does it end?
Indeed. I think it's all about messaging, isn't it, Vanessa? Because if you look at a rather more authoritarian regime like, I don't know, Dubai in the Arab Emirates or perhaps Singapore, yes, the justice system is rather more draconian, but the messaging from the authorities is clear, which is if you break the law, you're in a world of trouble. And that's not the messaging from this policy here in the United Kingdom.
No, it's not. I mean, you just mentioned shoplifting. I mean, it's an endemic, isn't it? And where once was the shoplifting was because people were poor or they couldn't afford food, etc., etc. Now it's more of the thing where it's done by organised crime. I've seen it myself. I saw somebody coming out of Tesco's with a trolley load full of alcohol. Unfortunately, they dropped a lot, but you know, it's just sort of like the norm now, which is worrying, and the police don't seem to be doing much about it.
No, it is a real concern, isn't it? And why would you say that shoplifting is such an egregious crime? Because others would argue, you know, the likes of Sainsbury's and Tesco, they can accommodate the cost of shoplifting. Why is it a problem, do you think, compared to more serious crimes?
Well, I disagree with that. I don't think they can accommodate serious crimes like that. I think they pass that on to you and me when we're doing our weekly shop. And, you know, these people seem to think that it's acceptable to take what isn't theirs, what they haven't paid for. And it just seems that it's out of control in our streets.
Vanessa, lovely to see you, and we'll catch up soon. My thanks to Vanessa Frake, who is a former prison governor and reform advisor. We've got so many conversations going at the same time. What I want to ask you this morning is, would you support American-style ICE deportations in the United Kingdom? Jeff in Bedford says, good morning, Mark. Could your guest, the Lib Dem spokesperson Christine Jardine, please concentrate on what she's paid for, and that is Great Britain. Our politicians think they can save the world. This country of ours is about to explode, and she has her nose in other people's business, and they won't listen to her. Jeff, thank you for that. Keep those messages coming. This is Peter in Sussex. Peter, do you think that Britain needs ICE-style deportation raids as well?
100%, Mark. But I must pull you up on a couple of things with that interview with Mrs. Jardine.
Yeah.
It seems like you were running with the hounds, hunting with the hounds and running with the foxes with all the comments, replying to her comments.
Yeah.
You've got to put facts to them two poor people that were shot. They're not innocent people. He took a to a protest with 50 rounds of ammunition.
Correct.
Now,
He had two cassettes of extra bullets.
Yeah, so if that doesn't tell you, he was warned by his family not to go, not to take the gun. Now, the poor girl in the car, she was asked several times. You've got to put context to all these incidents. Now, tragic as they are, she was told to get out the car, get out the car. Her wife, or I can't remember, a partner.
Yes, it was her wife, yes.
It was like encouraging her. It seemed like on the videos that we've seen on the social media. And she was warned so many times. And then the guy that shot her, okay, it was way over the top. But again, context, that guy who shot her was hit by another one of these protesters weeks or months before, where he had to be hospitalised with stitches in his legs because he was hit by a car. Now, if anybody, and I put your hand on heart, someone came at you with a car, and you've already been hit before, and you've been warned not to move, and that person comes at you with a car, you're going to take action. Sadly, as you know, what transpired, she lost her life. You know, unfortunately, America got guns. But that lady, one other thing I must say about what she said about the clown Davy, about this hate Trump syndrome that this liberal...
Oh, yes, Trump derangement syndrome. Sir Red Davey, leader of the Lib Dems, wouldn't attend the state banquet which featured Donald Trump.
I'll have a little bet with you, Mark, a charity bet. If Traitor Starmer, brings the leader of China over for a banquet, I'll bet you £100 from any of your charity that Davey will attend. I bet you he will attend.
Which is therefore a message from the Lib Dems, which is that President Xi of China, who runs an autocratic regime that is surrounded by allegations of death camps on its own people and the concentration camps, that is better regime than the United States.
Their human rights are abhorrent.
Zero.
But he will. I'll give you £100 to your charity if he doesn't attend. But if he does attend, I'll give you a charity. You know what I mean? Because you've got to have fairness in politics. If you're going to slag someone off for one thing, you've got to do it the same thing with another party.
Well, of course, and if the Lib Dems have conflated President Xi with Donald Trump, who is the leader of the free world and our #1 military and economic ally. Peter, I've got a quick question for you at 7:37 in the morning. Would you take Trump over Starmer in this country?
In a heartbeat, Mark, in a heartbeat. He's not perfect. He's not perfect, and he's not a politician. Remember all this, because all these politician leaders all think he's a politician. He's not. He's a businessman first and foremost. And I think he puts his country first. Now, going back to the illegal immigrants in America, I was looking at some stats. Obama, as you rightly said, that he deported loads of illegal migrants in his 2 terms. But did you know 67 people died? For whatever reason, they don't give you the reason, but 67 people died, illegals, while trying to get them out of America.
Of course.
Yeah, but democracy, they voted for this, and that's what Jardine can't understand. You know, she wants democracy. She's talking about the council elections being stopped, about democracy, and then she's criticising Trump for democracy that he actually put on his manifesto, if you call it over there, that's what it is,
yeah,
to get rid of them. And
Peter,
then you've got Clinton,
yeah.
you know, but I'll just say one last thing. Clinton, I've seen Hillary Clinton was advocating getting rid of illegals. Clinton Senior, I can't think of his first name.
Bill Clinton, yeah. All videos online from the 90s and the 2000s when the left actually had a brain cell.
Yeah, and all these lefty celebrities are crying crocodile tears over these 2 poor people. But what about the American girls that have been raped and killed by illegal immigrants in America, just like they are over here?
Correct.
There's no tears for them.
No, the left don't care.
And Dolly Parton, I see a tweet she made, and I love the lady, she's brilliant, but she said she's going to pay the funeral cost for that Rennie lady who got shot in the car.
Yeah.
Is she going to pay the funeral cost for the poor girls that were being raped and murdered by illegal migrants?
Indeed. And the victims of the crimes of illegal immigrants which happen on a daily basis. Peter, you've talked a lot of sense. Will you please promise to call me again? 03444991000. Have a great day, Peter, and we'll catch up soon. Well, a big reaction to Christine Jardine, who of course is from the Lib Dems, and she was very critical of these deportation raids by the US government. This is a voice note from Penny.
Morning, Mark. Just a quick one about this Liberal person who's defending the nutjobs over in the USA and their right to protest and getting shot. I would like to point out that maybe to put it into a phrase that they're effing around and finding out. Once someone from any type of law enforcement tells you to get out of the way, then you need to get out of the way. Also, if they're that innocent, why are they at a protest? Now, they only use force once it becomes not a peaceful protest, which is happening everywhere. So I don't know, does she really have her facts right?
Penny, again, you're making sense. You know, you get it, I get it, and I'm afraid a lot of woke commentators just don't, do they? And it is democracy. Donald Trump said he would do the tariffs. He said he would close the southern border. He said he would deport. Listen, we're going to get more on this. Could Britain go for a similar policy? Should we deport foreign criminals? Should we have an ICE agent type policy in this country? 03444991000. 7:40, this is Talk Breakfast.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
So, should Britain have US-style ICE deportation raids? Vincent says, well, we could have our own ICE agents that would arrest illegals, but will they then put them in camps or hotels so they can walk around free? It doesn't make sense. Ben in London says, good morning, Mark. Your guest, Christine Jardine from the Lib Dems, said a lot of people in the UK don't like Donald Trump. What an unprecedented statement. Yet again, politicians lying during interviews. What she failed to mention was that many of those people are Lib Dem followers. Britain as a whole love Donald Trump. It's Davies' dislike for Trump and his ICE staff, not the British public. And your guest earlier, says Ben, Benedict Spence is spot on. Protesters do not have the right to interfere in law operations. Well, let's get reaction now to what's happening in the United States. I'm delighted to welcome Heidi Hommel, who is a KTAR news reporter. Good morning, Heidi.
Morning, Mark.
Has some of the drama around these ICE raids simmered in the United States?
Unfortunately, it's not simmering. It's kind of ramping up, especially where I am in Phoenix, Arizona. There's even some concerns amongst the community here in Phoenix that we're sort of going to be the next Minnesota, that ICE operations are going to ramp up here. There was actually a raid on Monday, a series of sports bars around the valley where I live called Zips, and Homeland Security just shut down all these sports bars, went in with warrants and started arresting people. We don't know what they were arresting people for. It might be a bigger investigation into the restaurants, but they might be guilty of hiring illegal workers. So while things might be simmering down in Minneapolis, where we saw the 2 deaths with ICE agents, involving ICE agents, it's different in every state.
Does this strike you as potentially the right policy, which of course millions of Americans voted for at the last election, but the wrong delivery, poor execution? Is that the issue?
Yeah, so the first year of President Trump's administration, this had been going on, right? He campaigned on this, the largest deportation effort in the history of the United States. He was mainly going after criminals, people who came here illegally, who had committed crimes, who had criminal records. Those people are gone now. Now ICE operations are targeting citizens, everyday Americans, people who may have come here illegally, but they got an education, they got a degree, they started a business, they have careers, they have families here. So now it's really starting to hit the community level, and people are upset. They love their neighbor. They've never done anything wrong. They know they came here illegally, but why are you taking this person away?
Yes, of course. How do you see this playing out? Because Donald Trump has withdrawn ICE agents from Minnesota, I understand. Do you see the administration rowing back from the policy altogether over time?
I don't know that he's going to completely withdraw the troops out of Minnesota right away. I know he said there's the potential for that, but he needs local law enforcement and local politicians in Minneapolis to cooperate with him. Trump is not going to take a loss, okay? He needs to make this a win for himself. So in order to sort of wind operations down in Minneapolis, he needs a win. What does a win look like? The protesters go home. If state and local officials can get the protesters to go home, then I believe, he might consider winding down operations.
Are the local politicians, Heidi, who are inciting their citizens to actually protest at these ICE raids part of the problem? Likes of Governor Tim Walz in Minnesota, who's essentially empowered people and just say, look, stop this happening in our state. Surely that's unhelpful, given it's the democratic will of the American people to deport, let's be clear, dangerous criminals.
Tim Walz is a member of the Democratic Party. He was Kamala Harris's running mate against Trump. The irony here is kind of crazy. And did the American people vote for this? A majority of them did, but not everyone. And so those Americans who didn't vote for this are taking to the street and protest because, they don't like what's being done. Public sentiment around these ICE operations are changing. The 2 protesters in Minneapolis who were killed by ICE agents, even if they are guilty of being agitators, is that the correct crime for being an agitator? A bullet to the head, a bullet to the chest?
But is that not just poor policing rather than a failure of the policy?
That's a good point. We're only seeing it in Minneapolis. Border Patrol actually shot someone in Arizona near the border this week, on Tuesday, I believe, and it hardly made national news because the person they shot was firing a gun at law enforcement in a helicopter. They returned fire, striking him, but didn't kill him. This man was guilty of human trafficking.
But why? Yeah, I mean, sorry to interrupt you, Heidi, but why are politicians like Tim Walz urging the public to protest against the removal of dangerous criminals from the United States?
Because as I mentioned, they're not all dangerous criminals. Most of the dangerous criminals are gone now, and now they're hitting communities. They're getting, I know mothers, grandmothers who are in ICE detention centers here in Arizona and Eloy. They have not committed the only crime they're guilty of is coming here illegally. So yeah, their family, their community, they're upset.
Yeah, understandably so. Well, it's a very tough time for America, a very divided country, Heidi.
Yeah, certainly.
And it's very much right-left lines. Is anyone on the right, Republican supporters, having a bit of a wobble about this ICE policy?
I've seen, politicians are not coming out a ton and speaking out against Trump. Trump loyalty is very important to him, and that wouldn't be good for your political career. But I think Trump's even changed his tune this week. He wants to change the rhetoric. He had his wife, First Lady Melania, put out a video calling for unity. And so I definitely think we'll see things toned down a little bit as far as ICE operations go in Minneapolis. But it's going to be interesting to see. I think, if these protests continue, Trump just might want to strike back harder.
Heidi, it's been brilliant to have you on the show. Thank you for your valuable time. What an interesting report from the United States. Heidi Hommel is the KTAR news reporter responding to what's happening in the United States. Cliff has called the programme. Cliff, welcome to Talk Breakfast.
Morning, Mark. How are you?
I'm very well. Listen, it's very, very sad, isn't it? 2 Americans are dead as a result of these ICE raids. But does Britain, if correctly executed, need a similar policy here of deporting foreign criminals?
Well, obviously, we don't have the firearms as routinely as their enforcement agents have. And I've got my own views on the recent actions. But we have a very strong did have a very strong immigration policy in the UK. And my experience is law enforcement and military. So we know that we can check people when they arrive. We've got an absolute suite of technology, from retinal scans, fingerprints, all sorts of stuff that we can use. And a lot of these people will have been scanned before because they're coming from countries where there's been conflict and we've had military operating, and they collect their data. So the data for some of these people, at least, is available.
Cliff, do you think... Yeah, go on. No, make your point, sorry.
Yeah, so when in law enforcement, we dealt with some immigration issues, yeah?
Yeah.
And one of our things within the Constitution, if you commit a recordable or indictable offence and you are convicted of that offence, part of the punishment can be you're removed post-sentence from the UK. And we dealt with quite a few of those removals, so it can be done. It is just policy now, which is directing the laws that we already have.
Well, listen, you raise a very good point. Cliff, will we ever get on top of this? Given your experience in law enforcement, do you think that we will ever get on top of illegal immigration and police our borders properly ever again?
We won't at the moment. I don't know about ever again, but we won't at the moment because we've got an ideology from top to bottom now, and it's seeping into the police service, and it's so politically driven now that it's going to be extremely difficult to get back to even a stabilisation, let alone a reduction.
And if someone like Nigel Farage tries to turn the tide, he'll be facing the might of the bureaucratic blob.
But again, that's manageable, isn't it? Because at the top of that pyramid, you've got the law, you've got the statute, and if you enforce that statute, that will send out a clear message that it is being enforced, and your likelihood is that you'll be deported, or in fact not even let it into the country in the first place.
We can but dream. Cliff, thank you for a very important call. It is 7:51. This is Talk Breakfast. Another Labour U-turn, and this is the WASPy women who, of course, have had massive liabilities in regard to their pensions because of the change to the pension age that a good number of them were not informed about. Now, the Conservatives said that they were not going to pay out for the WASPy women, but this Labour government and the very two-faced Keir Starmer, Rachel Reeves and others posed for photographs with the WASPy women before the election saying, we're going to look at this and we've got your back. And since then, getting into power, Keir Starmer throws the WASPy women under the bus. It's a national scandal. It's Labour lies, and we'll call it out next.
This is the Political Asylum, current affairs, international news, letting criminals off while sending... Oi! Oi! You shut up! I'm trying to record something.
Stand by for 3 powerhouse hours of breaking news, challenging views. I don't give a flying damn about international law. I think people will viscerally reject this.
We're with you every weekday night, Monday to Friday, 7 until 10 p.m, right here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk. Across.
He's not perfect, is he, Donald Trump? But would you take him over Starmer to lead this country? This is a voice note from Steve.
Morning, Mark. This is Stephen Hartz. Since 1997, Britain has had a succession of milksop liberal leaders who put everybody in front of Britain and the British. So would I take Donald Trump, a genuine patriot, over a quisling like Keir Starmer every single day of the week? Have a wonderful weekend, my friend.
You too, Steve, and 5 stars for use of the word quisling. Richard says, Mark, I wish we had ICE agents in the UK. And Suze says, good morning, Mark. The point of deporting illegal immigrants, whether criminals or not, is to deter future illegals coming. There are legal routes. Use them. Why do people think it's okay to break the law and not expect repercussions? And Joan in Leeds, good morning, Mark. Your guest, Christine, hasn't got a clue about what's going on in America. If people decide to obstruct law enforcement, they will suffer the consequences. If the protesters are carrying a gun, they are deemed a threat. They already know this. Joan, thank you for that. You speak for many. Now, Labour face a High Court battle after a review ruled out £10 billion worth of compensation for millions of so-called WASPy women. Campaigners, known as the WASPies, have spent years arguing that 3.6 million women suffered major financial harm because they were not told that their state pension age would be equalised with men. They simply didn't know that this was going to happen, and they were not able to adapt their finances as a result. Now, after turning down repeated requests for financial redress, the government announced in November that it would retake the decision after new evidence came to light. But Stephen McFadden, the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, on Thursday confirmed none of the women will receive a payout. Let's get reaction now from Angela Madden, who is the chair of WASPy. Good morning, Angela.
Good morning, Mark.
Commiserations to you. This is not the result you wanted, and I know the battle carries on. The Conservatives were clear that they would not be compensating the WASPy women. It's a big problem for our Labour government, though, isn't it, Angela, because they posed for photographs with the likes of your good self before the election saying, we're going to look at this, we've got your back. Did the government or the incoming Labour government give you the impression that they were going to support the WASPy women?
Yes, they did. We all breathed a sigh of relief when Labour government were elected. And we thought, now we'll get some real people listening to us, and the ones who say they're with the general public and want to look after the people and all this sort of stuff. It was noticeable when they first came in that they suddenly only wanted to look after young people, people under pension age. And they say, oh, you get the triple lock, so you're all right.
Yeah, and of course the lifting of the winter fuel allowance as well, which of course targeted pensioners, didn't it?
It did. They had to row back on that, of course. And I'm hoping they will see sense about this as well. Pat McFadden yesterday spoke about all the publicity that was around, and interestingly today there's an advert doing the rounds on X that was in the Angling Times on the 25th of November 98. Not sure how many of their readership were women of, my age.
Yeah.
And it's a monopoly board, and it's got a big boot on it, and it says, land the right pension and stay hooked to the pastimes you enjoy in your retirement. And that, of course, is one of the adverts that was supposed to tell me that my state pension age was changing.
I mean, you couldn't make it up. It's insanity. It's a huge injustice. And here's a clip of the former Housing and Communities Secretary, Angela Rayner, before the election on the issue of the WASPy women. Take a listen.
Well, the government failed the women who were born in the 1950s. They stole their pension, that contract, that agreement that they thought they had, and then accelerated it so that those women didn't have the chance to prepare for that. We've said we'll right that injustice, and within the 5 years of the Labour government, we will compensate them for the money that they've lost. This is their money that they've had stolen off them, and it's completely unacceptable. And any government should act responsibly to these women who have looked after their children through that period. They're often looking after elderly relatives now, and they're a part of our society that have felt really unjust by the way they've been treated, and it's absolutely right that we deal with this issue.
What goes through your mind when you hear Angela Rayner saying that she became a key member of this government that has decided not to compensate the WASPy women?
Yes, it's hard to understand. I mean, Angela hasn't said anything against us. Hopefully now she's no longer in government, she will come out in support again and join the hundreds of backbenchers, the majority of backbenchers, who actually want to see this resolved as well.
Angela,
the other thing
go for it.
Is terrible is that the government isn't allowing Parliament to choose. It's very few very powerful men making the decision without reference to Parliament, without reference to the Ombudsman, and certainly without reference to women my age.
Angela, it's been a really, really tough week for you, and I know the fight goes on. More power to you. Angela Madden is the chair of WASPy. Lots of people voted Labour because they thought they would be compensated. Another hideous U-turn. This is Talk Breakfast. More to come.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
4 minutes past 8. Happy Friday, one and all. This is Talk Breakfast. Mark Dolan with you until 10 a.m. And breaking this morning, Donald Trump blasts kowtow Kia as the Prime Minister sells out Britain's national security for a few economic breadcrumbs. So is Britain now in the pocket of the Chinese state? And what now for the special relationship with America? A fresh BBC row has broken out as it's revealed a majority of the public are sick and tired of woke box ticking and diversity targets in their programmes. But will the corporation ever learn? And a Prime Minister on the brink as a projected poll claims that in May, Labour will have its worst election results in 116 years. If they do perform badly, some of their biggest union backers say Starmer must go. But here's a question for you at 5 minutes past 8 on a Friday morning. Will his replacement be even worse? Meanwhile, shoplifting continues to explode with 3 incidents of shoplifting happening every minute across the country. When will the authorities wake up to the scourge of this damaging crime? And controversy in regard to what's happening in the United States. But notwithstanding the tragic death of 2 protesters, does Britain need ICE-style deportation officers in the United Kingdom? What do you think? Would you vote for that? Would you pay for that? Do we need to deport foreign criminals, and do we need to use robust law enforcement to make it happen? My number is 03444991000. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. Leave us a voice note. We know you're busy. You're getting the kids ready for school, getting breakfast in their stomach. You're getting ready for work. You might be in the van or in the car on your way to work, on public transport. Either way, we've got your back. This is the show and the channel for Alarm Clock Britain. Those who put in more than they take out, put a shift in and contribute to the unstoppable powerhouse that is the British economy. This is Talk, and so as the saying goes, let's talk. So what do you think? Should Britain be deporting foreign criminals? Should we have ICE raids of the like that we've seen in the United States? This is a voice note from Jay.
Morning, guys. Fantastic show. I just want to say there seems to be a lot of politicians out there that seem to think Trump's this madman and this and that. Yeah, he's not perfect, but I'll tell you what, members of the public that I speak to, a fair few people, they would all take him over Starmer in a heartbeat. So, because he puts his people and country first, he put on the manifesto, we're going to stop the illegals coming in, we're going to bring prices down once we've dealt with that, and we're going to protect our country and beef our military up, etc. He's doing everything he said. This is what they voted. This is what majority of people voted for. So, at the end of the day, we hear this same story in America all the time. If the policeman is standing there or the ICE agent with a gun in front of you telling you not to move, don't move. The chances are you could be shot. Just listen.
Well, I agree. I don't think you should ever impede law enforcement. Brilliant voice note, Jay. Thank you. You speak for many. Well, Donald Trump is not happy with the Prime Minister. That honeymoon, by the way, is well and truly over, given the president's fury about the Chagos Islands giveaway. But what about this in regard to kowtow Kia? Donald Trump has blasted the Prime Minister for selling out Britain's national security for a few economic breadcrumbs. Take a listen to the leader of the free world.
Mr. President, what do you think about the UK getting into business with China? Keir Starmer was in Beijing.
Well, it's very dangerous for them to do that, and it's even more dangerous, I think, for Canada to get into business with China.
Well, let's get reaction now from the brilliant columnist at the Mail on Sunday, Dan Hodges. Dan, good to see you. The honeymoon is definitely over and the special relationship on the rocks.
Yeah, I think there's two things you have to say about this. I mean, firstly, obviously trying to build a relationship with Trump and, let's be honest, trying to ingratiate himself with Trump was very much at the core of Keir Starmer's whole international and diplomatic strategy. And, this isn't hindsight, I've been saying for some time, it's become increasingly apparent that that was going to run into, eventually, like everything Keir Starmer attempts to do, was going to run into a brick wall. And so it's proven.
Yeah.
The other side of it, though, I have to say this, though, is, and obviously we're seeing the clips of Donald Trump, attacking Keir Starmer's trip to China. That will actually help Keir Starmer because the British people kind of had it with Trump. They've had it with, initially they quite liked him. They thought he was a bit different. They thought he was a bit funny, but he was kind of a bit of an abstraction. But, his increasingly erratic behaviour, obviously the threat to invade Greenland, and obviously his disgraceful comments about British troops and other troops who, he said had been serving back from the front lines. People have had it with him in the main in this country. So by defining himself against Trump, ironically, on this issue, that will help Keir Starmer. Now, I'm not sure if he deserves that, because I do have very real concerns about how he's engaging with China. But we have to be honest, the fact that Donald Trump is attacking Keir Starmer is good news for Keir Starmer.
Well, it's interesting, and I take your points. I do think that Donald Trump is erratic. He always has been. He's got a gigantic ego. His remarks about British troops in Afghanistan were wrong, historically inept, offensive, upsetting, and fake news, to coin the president's own term. So I take all of that, and he is an incredibly unpredictable personality. But speaking on behalf of plenty of people that watch and listen to this show, my viewers and listeners think that Trump is not a perfect human being by any means. But there's a clear message that this is a president who puts America first, and that's not the perception of Keir Starmer at the moment.
No, I think that there are some people who do think that, but the reality is, and the opinion polls very clearly bear this out, Donald Trump is an incredibly unpopular and divisive figure here in the UK. It doesn't mean to say he doesn't have his supporters, and he obviously does have some supporters, but the bulk of the British people have really kind of had it with him. And you can see that in the way that a number of sort of senior British political figures, Nigel Farage is obviously one, who in the past were trying to present themselves as close to Trump, have started to back off. And I think they're right to do so, because the reality is, as we're saying, he is becoming increasingly erratic, to the point now that people in the United States, and who have not been critical of him before, are now starting to raise serious questions. I know of people who engage with the American administration who are becoming increasingly concerned about the nature of his behaviour. And the reality is, Trump is becoming increasingly political toxic. So Keir Starmer and other mainstream British politicians would do well to keep their distance.
Well, does that make Xi Jinping the answer then?
No, this comes on to the other thing. I think, as I said, there are legitimate concerns about Keir Starmer's visit and the nature of Keir Starmer's visit. Now, I think we have to be honest. We have to engage with the world as it is, not as we would like it to be. China is a major power, and we do need to engage. But we equally have to first acknowledge this is a power that is literally currently, attacking the UK. I mean, literally targeting. We've seen it. Targeting the UK, targeting UK politicians for its surveillance and other activities. Obviously, Keir Starmer does have to deal with the Chinese, but the question is, what are we giving and what are we getting in return? And obviously, one of the things we've been covering well over a year now, at the Mail on Sunday, my newspaper, is obviously the situation of this so-called Chinese super embassy in the heart of London, which is quite clearly just a very, a huge, massive spying and surveillance hub. And it is quite clear that embassy has been given the green light because Keir Starmer is effectively attempting to bend the knee to Beijing, and that's not a good look. But equally, as I said, the fact that it's Donald Trump who is attacking Keir Starmer will help Keir Starmer.
I mean, I might have to put you right slightly on that, Dan, and I never miss your columns, which are an absolute must-read in the Mail on Sunday. But regarding Trump, you know, like I said, I won't defend the remarks he's made, but I think actions speak louder than words, and there were just lots of people communicating with me on the show today via text messages and voice notes saying, yeah, the guy's not perfect, but he's improved the terms by which America trades with the world. He's closed the southern border. We can only dream of such a policy in the Channel here in the UK. He's axed net zero, which has reduced energy costs for the United States. He's bringing US jobs back to America. He's tackled wokery in America's public institutions, and the economy grew by over 5% in the last quarter, which Rachel Reeves couldn't manage in a year. So, yes, it could be that the chattering classes don't think too much of Donald Trump and perhaps wider public opinion, but I've got plenty of viewers and listeners that would bite your hand off for Donald Trump in this country to replace Keir Starmer.
Well, I think the fact that people want Keir Starmer replaced, I mean, I think that there is even wider agreement about a desire to replace Keir Starmer, one that I would share. There's no question just about Donald Trump's words. We've seen through his actions have been to intimidate and threaten to invade Greenland, who is a NATO ally.
Yeah, but that's just a political style. I think he's misunderstood. This is the art of the deal. This is a guy that is a disruptor. It's like if you're doing a deal, ask for far too much, and then what you get will be a happy landing point.
Yeah, we hear about this art of the deal. What has Trump got in relation to Greenland?
Well, it's all a little bit cloak and dagger, isn't it?
He would not have got. He hasn't got anything in Greenland. He's had to back off on Greenland. Look at how he's engaged with Putin. We've been told time and time again he was on the brink of this deal with Putin. He hasn't been on the brink of the deal. In relation to the art of the deal, the person who's skillfully exercised the art of the deal is Vladimir Putin, who's played Donald Trump like a fiddle. And the reality is, I completely understand that people, have concerns about immigration here and want robust action. But again, look at what's happening in the United States. ICE, the head of ICE, the enforcement agency, has just been replaced because he's basically gone too far. Now, this isn't a country where there is, as you say, a huge hunger for illegal immigration to be tackled. But even in the United States, there's a realization that Trump and his agents have gone too far. And that is being reflected in the UK.
Fair enough. And listen, plenty will agree with what you have to say, Dan. What about the state of the incumbent governing party? It's my understanding that a new poll has come out suggesting that May could deliver the worst election results for Labour in 116 years. What are the likely consequences, Dan?
Well, there are two things. Obviously, we've got the local elections in May. Now we've obviously got the Gorton by-election, which is an absolutely, it's going to be. We get excited about by-elections.
Man. Bring popcorn. In fact, do you want to come round to mine? We'll have a couple of beers and watch it together, Dan.
No,
because it's going to be fireworks.
This is going to be a pretty key one. The simple fact is, if Keir Starmer loses the Gorton by-election and then loses on the scale that everybody expects in the local elections, he's finished, and he will be replaced within the Labour Party. There's no doubt about that.
Wow. And you don't take the view that it's very difficult for the Labour Party to replace leaders like the Tories? You think the regicide is more difficult to deliver for a Labour government? You're not buying that.
No,
you think he's gone after May if it doesn't go well?
Yeah, I mean, it's not practically that hugely difficult. It's just that Labour doesn't have quite the history the Tories are doing it. But as I say, if the losses are on the scale, and obviously in Gorton, if he loses Gorton, having blocked Andy Burnham, who all the polls indicate would have won that seat, probably at a bit of a canter, then the Labour Party is just going to say, oh, we're really sorry, enough's enough.
I haven't spoken to you since the decision by the NEC, the governing body of the Labour Party, to block Andy Burnham's candidacy. Was that the right move, do you think? Have they sort of seen him off at the pass?
No, I mean, it wasn't, because, as I said, it's kind of just delayed. I mean, it's done two things. It's martyred Andy Burnham. So if Andy Burnham, there's already chatter around Westminster about Andy Burnham eyeing up another seat that he would possibly target after the by-election defeat, a probable by-election defeat. So he's boosted Andy Burnham. He hasn't solved any of his fundamental problems. And as I said, in a sense, he's created another trigger point, because the local elections were always going to be very, very difficult for Keir Starmer. And it was very difficult to see how he could have got beyond that. But now if he loses the Gorton by-election, then the pressure will mount on him even worse. So in a sense, he's now created two hurdles he's got to clear. He's got to win Gorton somehow, and he's somehow got to avoid catastrophe in the local elections. He's got to get over two hurdles if he wants to survive.
Most definitely. It's likely that May will go very badly, and it's likely that he will lose that by-election. If those two things do come to pass, Dan, who replaces him?
Well, there are a number of things. I mean, I think the person who we will see emerge soonest, and we may even see emerge before the local elections, is Wes Streeting. He's the person who wants to get a move on, if you like, with the contest. If he can't generate sufficient support, then I've been saying this for some time, Angela Rayner is incredibly popular. Whatever people think of her, Angela Rayner is incredibly popular within the Labour Party and the wider Labour movement. And she is properly keen to go for it. And then obviously you've still got Andy Burnham. And as I said, there are some sort of whispers and rumours that another seat may be being lined up for him, or he may have ambitions for another seat. So if a seat could become vacant, then because of the way he's been blocked, then at that point and Andy Burnham would become the favourite. But the point is, Starmer, this is the thing, Starmer has to see off all of them. He has to find a way of seeing off Wes Streeting, he has to find a way of seeing off Angela Rayner, and he has to find a way of seeing off Andy Burnham. He's got to somehow win in Gorton, and he's got to somehow avoid catastrophe in the local elections. And that would be a tall order for someone with, incredible political skills. Keir Starmer is not a man with incredible political skills.
Dan, we love having you on the show. Thank you so much for your assessment of the current political situation, and it's bad news for Labour. Dan Hodges is the brilliant columnist at The Mail on Sunday. Do check out his columns every week. There's no one that knows the internal workings of the Labour Party better than him. Let's head now to College Green. We're off to College Green. I'm delighted to welcome Alicia Kearns, who is the Shadow National Security Minister. Good morning, Alicia Kearns, and welcome to Talk Breakfast. Donald Trump not happy with the Prime Minister's trip to China. Take a listen to the leader of the free world and his remarks about Keir Starmer's trip to Beijing.
Mr. President, what do you think about the UK getting into business with China? Keir Starmer was in Beijing.
Well, it's very dangerous for them to do that, and it's even more dangerous, I think, for Canada to get into business with China.
Alicia Kearns, do you think that the Prime Minister has struck the right balance between our economic self-interest and our national security?
I'm afraid it's a hard no on that one. Look, our national security has to come before our economic security. People used to try and argue this point with me, and then we had the renewed illegal invasion of Ukraine, where we saw the impacts on our cost of living, on our energy bills, and the reality he has gone begging bowl in hand, saying, please solve my self-inflicted economic woes, and I'm not going to require anything of you for me to give you this propaganda visit. Oh, but you did require me to pre-approve the Chinese Communist Party embassy. I'm afraid it stinks. It's not in the national interest. And ultimately, after the increase in hostile activities we've seen from the Chinese Communist Party against our country in the last 18 months, what essentially does it say in terms of deterrence? It says you can do whatever you want to our country, and not only will we not deter you or punish you in any way, we'll reward you with a visit.
Well, I tend to agree. The problem we've got, don't we, Alicia, is a lack of economic firepower, which makes it difficult for us to stand up to China.
The thing I'd say about that is Keir Starmer's been really keen to say they're our third biggest trading partner. We can't ignore them. Firstly, no one's saying ignore them, but he's slightly being misleading there. So China has a £37 billion trade surplus with us. They need us more than them. The reality is that good exports under this government are down 27%. Exports to China overall are down about 40%. And actually, it's the Chinese buying from us. It's not us importing. But even the idea that we should be really bedding down essentially on an economic relationship with them is strategically naive. Xi Jinping has said He wants his country to be completely strategically autonomous, essentially to be able to be completely self-sufficient. So in the long term, he's not looking to give us economic wins, but to do it in the context of a British national being held hostage, an increase of tax on our country, a spy at the heart of the British Parliament. I mean, what message does any British person listening to this think that sends to the Xi Jinping?
Most definitely, although it could be argued that our economic decline happened on the watch of the Conservatives over 14 years. If we'd had robust economic growth, proper investment in the military, we wouldn't be in this situation.
We've said that there are things for us to learn, and we are reflecting on that very clearly. I think we're being very honest with the British people going forward about what's happening. But let's also be honest, we did have the pandemic, and I'm incredibly proud of how we responded to that. We stood up for the British people, we supported them, we got them through it when other countries suffered far worse. We had the renewed illegal invasion of Ukraine. Those aren't excuses, they're facts. We are learning the lessons that the British people have very clearly given us, and we will come back with a very clear economic offer, and that's one that's sensible, pragmatic, and that we can meaningfully deliver on.
A growing war of words, Alicia, between the Prime Minister and Donald Trump over a range of issues, including the disposal of the Chagos Islands. What do you make of Donald Trump? Because I've got viewers and listeners to the show today, Alicia, who take the view that Donald Trump is far from perfect. And of course, it's incredibly tragic that 2 protesters have died at the hands of the ICE officers seeking the deportation of illegal immigrants. But many of my viewers and listeners are saying I would take Donald Trump over Keir Starmer in a heartbeat because he puts Britain first, or he puts America first. If he was UK Prime Minister, he would put Britain first. What's your view of that?
I'm afraid Donald Trump is not someone I would ever want to see in charge of our country. I fundamentally disagree with him on many of his approaches, but not least that his lack of commitment to truth or to honesty is something that we should really be concerned about. His actions recently towards Greenland are utterly unacceptable and were essentially naked imperialism. I'm glad he's rowed back from that. But let's be very clear, our relationship with America has never been dependent on who was in the White House and who was in number 10. We have to have that relationship. It fundamentally matters. And actually, the UK has a unique ability to go and speak to the US system, to get in those doors and have those conversations. But we haven't seen Keir Starmer be able to really make hay with that relationship and make it, despite having given, state visits and all sorts. And I think that really reflects on Keir's failure as a diplomat, because I'd like to think if I was Prime Minister and I'd given a state visit to Donald Trump, that we would have not had tariffs put on us, for example, over Greenland, and we would have been in a much better place with America. So, look, people can talk to me about how proud Donald Trump of his country. I will not apologise for how strongly I defend our country, how proud I am, and I'm so angry at the way that Labour constantly talks us down and apologises for our history. But that doesn't mean that I think Donald Trump is the answer just because he refuses to talk down his own country.
Alicia, it's been fantastic to have you on the show. I look forward to our next on-air encounter. Thank you for sharing your valuable time with us. Alicia Kearns is a Conservative MP and Shadow National Security Minister. Your reaction, 03444991000. Kevin is in North Yorkshire. There you go. You've got the Shadow National Security Minister, Kevin, throwing a bit of shade on the US president.
Yeah, I mean, I was ringing in with regards to you asking the question, do we need ICE? And I would suggest, yes, we do. We need it even more than America. And I'll qualify that by saying, well, the differences are this, that when you look at the Americans, as your American radio host was saying, the ones that are left appear to be the ones that have integrated into America, and that their neighbours seem to like them. The problem that we have is that we don't have the same ethos as America. When the people come across the southern border in America, they're coming from South America mainly, not all, but mainly from South America, which is very westernized. So these people buy into being American.
Correct.
They want to be American. The problem that we have is that we are importing people that come from completely different cultures predominantly, and who do not wish to integrate in many cases, in the majority of cases. So the problem that we'll face in that is that we need an ICE agency even more than America does, because we have a completely different demographic entering the country.
I think you're right, and there's a strong cultural reason why deportations of illegal immigrants would be so essential in this country. Kevin, I would pay more taxes if that were to happen, if that were to come to pass. Obviously within the rule of law. It's tragically sad that 2 people have died. I wouldn't go, by the way, and interfere with law enforcement whilst carrying a weapon and 2 magazines of extra bullets. But that said, it's very sad that they've passed, but the policy is the right one. Kevin, what a great call. 100% agree with you. Call me again soon. This is Talk Breakfast, 8:21. What do you think? Would you take Trump over Starmer? 0344 499 1000. So much more to get through, folks. And you won't... well, basically, next up, woke madness that you will not believe. Don't go anywhere.
I had drunk the Kool-Aid. I believed that doing more business with China was going to be good for both of our countries. As I got more senior in the government, I saw what a massive security threat China was. It was particularly under the Boris government. We were forced by the Americans, by the then first Trump administration, to rip out the Huawei components. And it's clear that China is trying to infiltrate our system. You know, we've had spies in Parliament. We've now had this spying scandal in Number 10.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
You're listening to Talk Breakfast. It is 8:32. Dolan's dispatch at 9 a.m. This is the most anti-British Prime Minister in the history of Britain. That's Dolan's dispatch in 30 minutes' time. You won't want to miss it. Would you take Trump over Starmer. We know he's not perfect. He's a very flawed individual, but would you take him over Starmer? This is a voice note from Martin.
Good morning, Mark. Martin from Lichfield here. Dan Hodges, you're not just speaking to the wokery in London. People outside think Trump is a great guy. He's not perfect. He's a bit of a maverick, but he loves his country. That's what we want here. Someone that loves their country. Starmer hates it. The Labour Party, most of them hate it. All the ICE thing over there, yeah, it's not going to work perfectly, but he's gone in and he's done what he said he's going to do. If you don't want to get injured, don't protest.
Brilliant. Thank you for that voice note. Keep them coming. A developing story now. Trans women will still be allowed to access a female-only swimming ponds in North London in spite of the Supreme Court's verdict regarding the primacy of biological sex. Let's get reaction now from the Chief Executive of Sex Matters, Maya Forstater. Good morning, Maya.
Good morning.
Your reaction to this ruling?
We're very disappointed in this judgment, but all it does is kick the can down the road. What it didn't do was consider whether it's lawful to allow men who identify as women into women's changing rooms. What it said is, not today, not this court, we don't want to decide it. So they've kicked the can down the road rather than decide whether it's lawful or not.
So the battle has been lost, but the war is ongoing.
Exactly. And the City of London are going to have to, the reason they said it couldn't be decided by that court is because the City of London were consulting. Now they have to make a decision. They have to come out with a set of rules in time for the summer that are lawful and that can be communicated to men and women and to staff, and to tell people why they're allowed in or why they're not allowed in.
Well, indeed, the verdict of the Supreme Court is that the words man and women are backed up by biological sex. That is the law. There are just two sexes. And therefore, notwithstanding this verdict, the actions of the authorities in regard to these women-only ponds are illegal.
Yes, we think they are, and we think they're going to have to stop it.
Why is it a problem if you've got female-only ponds and there's somebody that identifies as female, they're very discreet, they use a private cubicle to change? Why is it a problem for someone that feels they're in the wrong body to use that female space, given that they view themselves as women? Why is it a problem?
Well, the ponds aren't very discreet. They're communal open changing rooms and open showers. And what you can't do is let someone in and then say, but you can't use those changing rooms. You have to use a discreet changing room. If you let someone in, you let them in on the same rules as everyone else. And at the same time, if there are women using the communal changing rooms, and showers, they're naked. If somebody walks past, the man might be dressed, but he's walking past naked women. That's a situation of harassment. You can't let that happen. You have to have clear rules about who's allowed into those kind of situations. And it's really obvious what the decent rules are.
Most definitely, and no pun intended, Maya, it's not beyond the wit of man to understand that for some biological males, this is a tremendous opportunity to enter a female-only space.
Absolutely, and how can the staff decide who's who? What the staff need are clear rules. And the thing is, there is a mixed pond, so it's not like there's nowhere for people to swim on Hampstead Heath.
Yeah.
There are choices for everybody.
And also, I mean, call me old-fashioned, there's a men's pond as well, and given that they're biological males, they might be quite comfortable there.
Well, exactly, and they should be welcomed and respected there as gender non-conforming.
Well, this is the point. That if a bloke in a dress goes to the men's ponds, it's not a problem. That's not going to upset anybody, is it, Maya?
Exactly. That's what being inclusive should be.
Most definitely. And I grew up. This is, I think, what's crazy about the trans debate, Maya, is that I grew up, and I remember, we'd have like a family friend, and there would be these quiet mutterings before they came, maybe for like Christmas Day or something. You'd go, by the way, Richard, it's Rebecca now. And okay, Rebecca, And it wasn't an issue back in the day, was it, for people to identify as a different gender, as long as it didn't impact on women's hard-won sex-based rights. The trans ideology has been very bad for trans people.
Exactly. People's identity can be different from their sex. Nobody's saying that everyone has to, wear a suit and tie or a dress based on whether they're male or female, but the clothing you wear doesn't change your sex. And when you're in a situation that is single sex, that should be respected.
And what I find amazing is that many on the so-called progressive left, Maya, seem to have abandoned women's rights, which used to be a central plank of their philosophy, and they seem to have abandoned minorities, because it's a big issue in a place like the Hampstead swimming ponds for Muslim women, for example, Jewish women, perhaps some very religious Christian women as well. They're not going to use a facility where biological men can be found. That is going to be, literally, it's against their religion.
Exactly. And what we interviewed women from those communities as part of our case, and what happens is women simply self-exclude from a service. It's not that they're there and they're feeling uncomfortable, they just don't go. And so the City of London say, well, there's no problem, because the people who do come and use the ponds say that they're happy with men who identify as women being there, but they're not considering the women that they're excluding.
It's not very progressive, is it, to be inclusive to biological men in a female space at the cost of women who have a religious faith? I mean, none of this stacks up. It's ideologically incredibly inconsistent and contradictory, and the opposite of progressive.
It is. It's just bonkers, and it puts the staff in a difficult position. It's the officials and the politicians at the top of the City of London not taking responsibility for protecting women's rights, women's dignity, and just adopting clear, lawful rules.
Now, Maya, I also just find, from the point of view of discretion and politeness and a general feeling of appropriateness, that these unisex toilets are horrible. I was in a cafe the other day, and you go in, I'm looking for the men's room and the women's room, but unfortunately it's not the 20th century, so I've got some confusing image of a man and a woman. So I go in, and you've got multiple cubicles and then shared sinks. And I go in there, and I feel like uncomfortable actually around women, because, you know, I come out of the bathroom and I'm maybe going to pull a nose hair out of my nose, right? You know, I've got some spinach in my teeth. I'm doing up my flies. So, you know, this is actually, no one really wants this, do they? You know, it's awful and massively concerning for women's safeguarding, but just from an etiquette point of view, you know, can't women have their own space, not only to go to the bathroom and be safe, but actually to put their lippy on and apply some mascara without blokes around? I don't think women want that.
Absolutely. And everyone accepts that, you know, on a train, on a plane, there are places where there's just not very much space, and all you can have is unisex. And, you know, frankly, it's not very nice, but it's the best you can get. But particularly in something like a pub or club or a theatre, where there are lots of people coming and going, where there's often alcohol involved, places where there are adults and children, it just doesn't feel safe and decent to have men and women mixing, exactly as you say, in those spaces where somebody could be doing up their flies, where a lock could fail, where women are dealing with periods and so on. You know, they might be running out of toilet paper, and somebody needs to pass a bit of toilet paper underneath the walls,
the cubicle,
the cubicle walls, exactly. You know, these are things that you can feel comfortable doing in a single-sex space, but not in a mixed-sex space.
Briefly, Maya, the reason why we talked about this, of course, is because this is not about North London and the Hampstead Ponds. This sets the precedent across the country. Will this madness ever end? Is common sense going to prevail, Maya?
The Supreme Court's judgment is really clear, and ultimately service providers and employers and the government are going to have to follow the Supreme Court's judgment. So this court in the Hampstead Ponds case really just kicked the can down the road to another day. But the Supreme Court's judgment is clear.
Well, long may it prevail. Maya, more power to you for the important work you do at Sex Matters. Maya Forstater is the chief executive of that organisation. Simple question at 8:41 on a Friday morning. We know Trump is not a perfect individual whatsoever, but would you take him over Starmer? This is a voice note from Steve.
Steve from Barnsley. I don't know who that clown is that's just been on quoting the British people have had enough of Trump. I travel the country daily for my job and speak to many people, and you won't believe the amount of people that would prefer to have Trump running our country rather than these pots that we've already got running now, sinking this ship.
Well, Steve, I tend to agree with you, and the people that I mix with, many of them will agree that Donald Trump is far from an ordinary human being. I don't think he's all that honest. He's got a gigantic ego, but I judge people by their actions, not their words. Close the southern border, taking American jobs back to America, axe net zero, they got cheap energy. Did you know that a gallon of petrol costs the same now as it did in 2010, thanks to his policies? No tax on tips, very supportive of the working class, ended wokery in their public institutions. There's no trans madness in the United States. Actions, not words. Let's get a call. Victor is in Bedfordshire. Good morning, Victor. Welcome to Talk Breakfast.
Yeah, hi.
What are your thoughts about this? The ICE raids we've been talking about, of course, these are the officers who are arresting illegal immigrants and deporting them. What do you think?
Well, I was listening to a conversation somewhere else about this. Someone, well, a group of people, they went to the States. And they were stopped, just on holiday, and they were stopped by some of these operatives.
Yeah.
I have concerns that this summer, the USA, Canada, and Mexico are hosting the World Cup.
Yeah.
Well, most of the games are in the USA, but I do have concerns about that as well. People travelling in from all over, from various parts of the world, and so some of them could come under, they might have to wash themselves as well.
Well, Victor, you are right about this, and I discussed it with the Lib Dem MP Christine Jardine earlier, which is that if you're going to deport illegal immigrants, which many people support, I certainly support it, it has to be done within the rule of law. It can't be willy-nilly. These cops can't go AWOL and just popping shots at people because they're holding a placard.
Yeah,
but are we not allowing this sort of debate to get railroaded? The American people voted for deportations, and many people watching and listening to this show, Victor, would love the same here.
Well, yeah, they did, and it's like someone else said, it's the way they're going about it. But just to come back to the World Cup, the former president, the FIFA, has advised people not to go to the USA.
Victor, what an interesting conversation, and you are right. There are some people who will hesitate now to go to the World Cup, will be concerned about what's happening in the United States. Victor, for this policy of the ICE agents to have authority, the officers must follow the rule of law. It's the same here in the UK, okay? If the cops gun someone down, such as, for example, at the Manchester synagogue attack last year, there was actually an inquiry after that shooting. Of course, the cop was found to have been doing his job brilliantly and very bravely. But in this country, if an officer shoots someone down in the purpose of doing their duty, there will be an investigation, and you've got to have that. You've got to have the rule of law, which may not be happening in the United States. That doesn't mean it's the wrong policy. Chris is in Epsom. Good morning, Chris.
Morning, Mark.
Go on then. What do you think?
Well, I'd swap Starmer for Trump in a heartbeat, although I agree with you. He's got a massive ego. He doesn't always tell the truth. He speaks too quickly, but I'd still swap him in a heartbeat.
And why would you take Trump over Starmer? What are the headline reasons?
Because he says what he says. He does what he says on the tin.
Yeah.
He's done everything that he said he was going to do in his mandate. And he knew that he was going to, from his first term, I think it was brilliant, actually, that he didn't win the second term straight away, because he learned from the first term how to change what we call the blob, they call the swamp.
Yes.
And he cleared them out. I forget the number. It was an incredible. 1,800 people were changed on the day of his start of his presidency. The thing is that I've lived in America, and I can tell you I've lived in New York and Las Vegas. Well, I've stayed in Las Vegas for months. I didn't actually live there.
Yeah.
But the thing is that if you behave properly with the police out there, I've never had a problem. I've been stopped. I've been arrested actually out there, but I never had a problem. I complied with what they asked.
What were you up to, Chris? What were you apprehended for? Something exciting?
No, nothing exciting. It's a driving offence.
Oh, there you go. I was hoping you were like, I don't know, an international spy or something like that, like James Bond.
No, not exactly. But the thing I wanted to get onto was ICE operating over there. Now, first of all you have to do is look at the mindset of a person that not only takes a weapon to a protest, but carries 50 extra rounds. What was his mindset in going there with 50 extra rounds? He was thinking, well, there may be a shootout, a battle, and I'm going to need extra rounds. It's beyond all comprehension.
If I was going to protest, I wouldn't be carrying a gun. I know it was his right in Minnesota, it was legally held. But if you're going to protest and kick off and start smashing up an ICE vehicle, which he did a week previously, probably not the best idea to be armed.
No, then the problem is if you look at all the social media posts, or a majority of them, you can see that these left-wing activists are protagonists. They try and provoke reactions.
They do.
And the thing is that, as you have rightly said, and as Benedict said earlier, if you are going to do that, and you are going to threaten an ICE agent or a police officer, or they have a genuine fear, they are likely to use their weapon. And that is just a reality. And we shouldn't question it over here. It's not our business. I mean, what I would do over here, we need an ICE force over here.
Oh, and on that we can agree. Listen, Chris, I cannot stop you in your prime because you are a speaker of common sense, but the clock's against us. But I totally agree. Chris says that Trump is not perfect, but he'd have him in a heartbeat running this country, and wants to have an ICE-style agency here in the UK. Would that work? Let me know your thoughts. 03444991000. Here's a voice note from Ken.
Morning, Mark. Ken here in Dorset. Trump over Starmer. I would take Trump, J.D. Vance, Giorgia Meloni, and even my ex-wife over that traitor and his whole rotten government with him. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ken. Brilliant voice note. Another woke scandal engulfs the BBC. The corporation, they don't get it, do they? That's next.
I have a message tonight for the incredible people of Greenland. And if you choose, we welcome you into the United States of America.
That is why I said the use of tariffs against allies is completely wrong.
You know, the fact that they had a boat land there 500 years ago doesn't mean that they own the land. We're not going to have Russia or China occupy Greenland. So we're going to be doing something with Greenland either the nice way or the more difficult way.
Any decision about the future status of Greenland belongs to the people of Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark alone.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Would you take Trump over Starmer in the United Kingdom? A quick one from Lisa in Northern Ireland. Good morning, Mark. I thought your guest Dan Hodges had emerged from the Westminster out-of-touch bubble. But listening to him regarding President Trump, he's obviously been sucked back in again. And Linda, good morning, Mark. Trump puts his country first. Starmer puts his country last. All he cares about is Starmer. And when he's booted out, will swan off to a highly paid job in Europe. That's Linda in Deal. Well, Starmer is a topic of today's Dolan's Dispatch in 10 minutes' time. You won't want to miss it. There's trouble in paradise, folks. The BBC has got to stop box-ticking casting that shoehorns ethnic minority actors into period dramas, a review has urged in a damning independent report into the corporation's content. The BBC was also told it needs to improve coverage of the working class and women over 60 if it's to keep engaging audiences. Let's get reaction now from a good friend of the show, former BBC producer, author of Is the BBC in Peril, John Mayer. Good morning, John. Welcome back to Talk Breakfast.
Hello, Mark. Good to see you in your new home.
Oh, well, thank you so much. It's great to be here. Do you think the BBC have a case to answer for shoehorning diverse actors into their productions?
Surprisingly, I actually agree with part of this report because I do watch things, and I watch particularly police dramas where very senior policemen are black, and I think, hang on, that's not the reality. But that having been said, if you watch Blue Lights, the senior policeman who's black apparently is very, very good, and that's used there because of that. But I do think there is a danger that because of pressure, and the BBC always responds to pressure, people are shoehorned into parts for which they're not suitable, and certainly in historical dramas as well. You know, they shouldn't be there. But look, it's got to represent the nation, and it tries its best. It sometimes bends over backwards too much.
Well, this is it, and I think you're right. For example, the Charles Dickens' Great Expectations adaptation, released in 2023, John, was held up as an example of the problem with a mixed-race actress called Shalom Brune Franklin playing Estella, despite the story taking place in the early to mid-19th century. And this is what brings diversity policies into disrepute, isn't it?
I think it probably does, but if they're a great actor or great actress and they deserve the part, let them have it, you know. But don't look tokenistic, because too often it does look tokenistic.
Well, I think that's the issue. I mean, for example, Trevor McDonald as the face of News at 10 for decades. That wasn't woke box ticking, was it?
No, I had a fascinating experience years ago when I put on Trevor McDonald talking to Clive Murray in London, and the audience was almost entirely black, and all these young people who said that their parents used to let them stay up until 10:05 so they could see a black face on TV, because there weren't any black faces on TV. So you know that was an example of that. And Trevor McDonald never made anything of his blackness, nor indeed does my friend Clive Murray. He's not a black activist. He's a great presenter and a great reporter, and that's the way it should be.
He's there on merit, and that's the point, isn't it? And there's just a whiff of tokenism that suffuses too much of the BBC's output, and I don't think it does ethnic minority Brits any favours either, John.
I don't think something I'm intrigued with is that all of the on-air presenters, particularly in BBC News, who've done well, tend to be posh British Asian women.
Yeah. It's very true. I mean, what I have to tell you, you know, whatever happened to the silver foxes? I was talking about a clip from the BBC Look North show earlier, and Paul has messaged me saying, I believe it's Peter Levy. But, you know, where are the kind of, you know, the old white blokes on telly? They seem to have been cast aside by the corporation.
Oh, you know, telly's young people's business, and you know, you're there for so long, and then you fall off your perch, you get knifed, or you get arrested. One of the two.
Yeah, so, that's true.
You have to accept that, but you know, very few survive, and you know, I mean. But if you've got talent, you survive. I mean, I put on in Oxford last night Alexander Armstrong, who's 55, who must be the busiest man in British broadcasting, and he's busy because he's very good. he's got a posh accent, but we'll forgive him that one. But you go for merit. Don't go for tokenism, because tokenism is no good for the people who you're being tokenistic towards. Because if they fail badly.
Indeed, and of course there's the other issue which I think affects the advertising industry as well, John, because I don't think that most people have an issue with diverse faces and diverse voices, because, like I mentioned, Trevor McDonald, and throughout history we've had diverse faces on the TV, but it's the idea of over-representation. Is that a concern, that the mathematics of this don't add up, given the sheer number of people who are not of colour in this country?
Yeah, it is a concern in advertising as well. There are an awful lot of black families in adverts now, on mixed race families. I mean, and you think, hang on a minute, but look, I mean, the broadcasters and the advertisers have to reflect the nation. They need to do that fairly and on merit, and not just on percentages.
Most definitely. John, really great to see you again, and I hope that we'll get many conversations now that I'm, as you say, at my new home of talk. You're always an interesting voice and a very experienced BBC producer. Have a good Friday. John Mayer, ex-BBC producer, author of Is the BBC in Peril? I think the public have had enough of that, haven't they? They really have had enough of tokenism, and I think it's insulting and patronising to British people of colour to tick all of those boxes. Listen, let's get to some of your feedback. Would you take Trump over Starmer? Richard says, good morning, Mark. Richard. Starmer has the backbone of a windsock. I want to know who is pushing the China agenda and who is saying ignore the security services when this goes wrong. Let's take a listen now to a voice note from Martin.
Morning, Mark. Martin from Philly. I take Trump any day over Starmer. Trump is a patriot. Starmer is a traitor.
Wow. Jacqueline Liverpool says, good morning, Mark. The irony of your guest Dan Hodges stating Donald Trump is erratic and gone too far, while we currently have Never Hear Keir sitting in China the second he offers the normal. Well, listen, Dolan's dispatch is about Starmer next.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Three minutes past 9. Happy Friday, one and all. I'm Mark Dolan, and this is Talk Breakfast. Breaking this morning, and Donald Trump blasts kowtow Kia as the Prime Minister sells out Britain's national security for a few economic breadcrumbs. Is Britain now in the pocket of the Chinese state? And what now for the special relationship? Meanwhile, a Prime Minister on the brink as a projected poll claims that Labour will have its worst election results in 116 years in May. And if they do perform badly, some of the biggest union backers of the Labour Party say Starmer must go. But here's a question at 3 minutes past 9 on a Friday morning. Will his replacement be worse? And is there a fresh twist in the shooting of an ICE deportation protester in America? Aside from the controversy over how that policy is executed, should we have ICE-style deportations in the United Kingdom? If the rule of law is followed and the cops do their job properly, should we have deportations for illegal immigrants via law enforcement? Let me know your views, 0344 499 1000. And we know he's not perfect. He's a very flawed human being, but would you take Trump over Starmer? Let me know your thoughts. Text the word TALK in your message to 87222. Leave us a voice note. And as the saying goes, let's talk. In just one moment, it's Dolan's dispatch. But what about Trump versus Starmer? Who would you take to lead the country? This is a voice note from Boz.
Morning, Mark, and the breakfast team. Travelling Boz here. I mean, how could you even compare? Of course we'd have Trump. The only ones that won't want him are these lib softies, wokey. And we do need something like ICE here just to put the fear of people. So you can't just walk around the streets and cause damage. You're going to get deported. OK? Starmer over there with the Chinese. Unbelievable, that fella. He'll sell, I don't know what he's going to sell next. The Isle of Wight, maybe.
What a perfect warm-up, Boz, for today's Dolan's dispatch. There's a clear pattern here. A human rights lawyer turned Prime Minister that wanted Gulf War veterans prosecuted for serving their country, for placing themselves in the line of fire, for risking their lives to preserve our values and our safety. This is the desired prosecution on the part of a former human rights lawyer, now Prime Minister Keir Starmer, that wants to see soldiers prosecuted for following the orders of His Majesty's government. This is a former human rights lawyer turned Prime Minister who, in office, opens the door to a flurry of lawsuits on soldiers who fought the IRA. An IRA, a terror group that, let's not forget, killed innocent civilians and sought to murder the entire British government at the Grand Hotel in Brighton in 1984. This is a Prime Minister in Sir Keir Starmer who said the true bit out loud when he said he preferred Davos in Switzerland with the global billionaire elite rather than Westminster, the seat of our democracy. This is a Prime Minister whose policies are leading to the closure of 8 pubs a day. Now, as well as being critical social infrastructure and a big part of our economy and a big employer of young people, pubs represent a Britain that is fast disappearing. A Britain that this Prime Minister clearly detests. This is a PM who wages war on farmers, the people that put food on our plates, with family farms in particular that have been in families for generations, having to sell up to pay for Rachel Reeves's welfare splurge. This is a Prime Minister that wages war on working people with the national insurance tax raid, red tape and costs for businesses, as well as the minimum wage spike, which makes it harder for companies to employ young people. This is a Prime Minister that has reawoken the old enemy of unemployment. This from the party of working people, you couldn't make it up. This is a Prime Minister that seeks to upend the ancient tradition of jury trials, which goes back almost 900 years. A Prime Minister that accelerates the handover of militarily significant British sovereign territory to a Chinese ally and gets us to pay billions for the privilege. So it's a clear theme. A Prime Minister at war with his own people, a government at war with its own country. The farmers, the pubs, the military veterans, free speech, jury trials, sovereign British territory sucking up to authoritarian China. We have a globalist Prime Minister who is willfully unpatriotic. And with cancelled elections, having previously tried to reverse Brexit, and having thwarted Andy Burnham in his parliamentary ambitions, we have a Prime Minister who fears democracy itself. This is quite provably the most anti-British government in history. But don't worry, because in 3 years' time, the ultimate vote is coming. Revenge on Sir Keir Starmer and the damage that he's done to this country will be a dish served cold. The turkey that's currently in charge will be well and truly stuffed. Gobble, gobble. Your reaction, 03444991000. Let's get the response now to the Prime Minister's trip to China from Sir Geoffrey Clifton-Brown, Conservative MP for North Cotswold. Good morning, Sir Geoffrey.
Well, good morning, Mark. Very good to be on with you.
Well, it's lovely to have you on the programme, and Happy New Year to you. What do you make of the Prime Minister's trip to China? Has he sacrificed our national security in return for some economic breadcrumbs?
Well, you enunciated a huge list there of what the Prime Minister is getting wrong. And you can never rely on what he's going to do when he goes abroad. As you say, giving up the Chagos and costing us 35 billion in the process, you just simply don't know. I think that China is a very difficult subject. They are a big trading nation. We have the possibility of becoming richer as a result of trading with them. So I don't think we can ignore them. But on the other hand, as you say, we certainly don't want to be kowtowing to them. It needs to be a fully and open trading relationship. We need to be aware of what we're doing. We need to sup with a long spoon on this relationship, but we can't ignore them.
The truth is, as you say, as you imply in your answer there, Sir Geoffrey, we just don't have the economic firepower to truly stand up to China. And that's why a focus on the economy is first and foremost a priority for any government.
And I mean, there's one other aspect about this. Whatever one thinks of Trump, you cannot have one nation trying to dictate to another democratic nation what their trading policy should be. Yeah. So I think Trump trying to put pressure on us not to trade with China, whether one wants to trade with China or not, is a different matter. But he shouldn't be doing that to another nation. They should be making their own decisions. But yeah, there we are.
Well, no, that's right. I mean, do you have any sympathy for the Prime Minister, given the fact that, you know, Britain is a lesser nation than it once was, and that's not a problem exclusively of Labour's making?
Well, I think it's got very, very much worse under the last 18 months or so that he's been Prime Minister. And I would like to just, on that long list that you opened so wonderfully in this programme, take one aspect. And that is the support for our poor armed forces. I mean, I think this whole business about trying to overdo the Conservative legislation, which we're going to put in place to protect our troops from prosecution over the IRA atrocities, I think really shows real lack of support for our armed forces. And as you rightly say, in a very heated situation, you have to make split-second decisions. And it's quite possible in those situations to make the wrong decision with hindsight. It's very easy to sit in a warm desk in Whitehall and say, well, they shouldn't have done that. But they're in the heat of battle. They have to do what they think is right. And the idea of lawyers chasing up our troops after some military action, I think is quite wrong. And it sends a bad message to our armed forces, and particularly in recruiting new youngsters.
Well, that's right. Soldiers need agency to do their job, don't they?
They do, absolutely. We put them there to put themselves in harm's way. And in that situation, we should support them when things go slightly wrong that we don't like. I mean, that's just how military battles play out. And I think this is quite wrong.
Most definitely. Another story that I'd love your attention to, please, Sir Geoffrey, is the release of nearly 50,000 criminals from jail early in the first year of the government's controversial soft justice scheme. Labour has freed nearly 50,000 criminals from jail early. New figures from the Ministry of Justice showed 48,931 offenders were let out of prison onto the streets in the scheme's first year. This is, of course, a policy launched by then Justice Secretary Shabana Mahmood, now Home Secretary. Your reaction?
Well, I chair the Public Accounts Committee, and we've done a lot of work in this field. And the problem is that the prisons are full to bursting. And I have to say, we haven't brought any new prisons on stream for some while, and we need to do that absolutely rapidly. And we can do that, I think, much more quickly than we are at the moment. And the problem with letting out all these criminals early is they then go and commit another crime, they're then recalled to jail, and the whole system goes round and round in a circle. So I think the government really need to get a grip of this, and they particularly need to get a grip of sending people home. Immigrants who come into this country who commit crimes should be given the highest priority to be sent home. It's quite unacceptable that they come in here illegally and then commit crimes. You know, really, they really need to make that a top priority.
Most definitely. And Sir Geoffrey, I'm not one to allow COVID to be used as an excuse, but it was during the pandemic that the government's efforts under Boris Johnson, the efforts of the last government to build more prisons were thwarted because of the pandemic.
That's true. But I think before the pandemic, and even during the pandemic, there was still planning going on. We failed to get planning permission in those years, and this government hasn't accelerated that prison building program. It's clearly now urgent. I think the government have a real problem in the criminal justice system. We know from our public accounts works that there are enormous delays in the courts. We know that prisons are running at 97, 98% capacity, and we know that the probation service has got a real problem as a result of all these prisoners being let out of prison. So I think that the government needs to get a real grip on the criminal justice system in this country. We've got people who have been raped, who are not going to trial, their perpetrators are not going to trial for at least 3 or 4, even 5 years in some cases. So the criminal justice system is in some degree of chaos.
Can I ask you, for Sir Geoffrey, your reaction to the actions of the ICE officers in the United States who are seeking to deport illegal immigrants? It's quite clear, isn't it, Sir Geoffrey, that all law enforcement should follow the rule of law. That may or may not have happened in the United States. Notwithstanding the tragic death of 2 protesters, is it still the right policy?
I think one should always follow the rule of law. There's no question about that. Of course, we in this country want to see more illegal immigrants sent back home. That's absolutely clear. But I'm now getting the scenes on your screen, and I just do think that everybody should be following the rule of law. The immigration system is hideously complicated, as we found in our PAC hearing 2 weeks ago. What the government need to be doing is trying to simplify that system and then make it work properly so that people who are genuinely in need of asylum are allowed to stay here, but the others who are not in need of asylum and who do come in to this country illegally on small boats are sent home much more quickly than they are at the moment.
Now, we know that he's not a perfect human being by any stretch of the imagination, Sir Geoffrey. His remarks about British and NATO troops in Afghanistan were egregious and wrong. He's a very unpredictable personality. He contradicts himself. He's a bit of a stranger to the truth at times. But can you sympathise with why so many of my viewers and listeners would swap Donald Trump for Sir Keir Starmer in a heartbeat?
Well, America are our biggest trading partner. I think people don't really realise actually how much trade there is between our 2 countries. But they are by far our largest trading
And they're the
partner.
biggest investor in the UK.
And they are a huge investor in the UK. So we have to deal with Donald Trump. And I do think the Prime Minister is right to try and forge a relationship with him. He is an unpredictable character, but we just have to deal with him as best we can.
Do you not make him damning him with faint praise there a little bit, Sir Geoffrey? Almost throwing shades on the Donald Trump. I mean, clearly he's a maverick and shoots from the hip. But in many of his actions, he's quite a true conservative, like your good self, isn't he? Closing the southern border, rethinking the madness of net zero, bringing US jobs back to America. These are all robustly conservative policies.
Well, look, Mark, I think his heart is in the right place. It's just how he carries out these policies that I think we would have some reason to debate with him. But as I say, we have to deal with him. And, where we can actually make common cause with the Americans. And I think basically, at heart, if you speak to him reasonably and explain why you're doing what you're doing, actually, I think on the whole, in the end, you get the right result. Look at Greenland. We don't know quite where that's going to finish, but it does look as though it's going in the right direction because we've spoken to him in a cool, calm way, explained the situation, and I think we're going to come out with a sensible policy. If you would ask me the question who I would rather have, Trump or Keir Starmer, I'd have neither of them. I'd have Kemi Badenoch.
Well, there you go. And Sir Geoffrey, you mentioned the liaison committee on which you sit. On one of those occasions, at one of those committees, Sir Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, said he would provide details to you on the details of housing for migrants. So let's take a listen to the clip if we can.
Just a pinpoint before. What other accommodation precisely are you planning to take over to provide temporary accommodation for families?
Oh, there's lots of housing in many local authorities that can be used, and we're identifying where it can be used. But I mean, look.
Sorry, can you give us? Have you got any examples you can give us?
No, but I'll write in and give you details.
Because I could say certainly in a number of our local authorities, already picking up from around the table, there isn't a lot of spare housing available. If there were, councils would be able to be dealing with it by now.
Well, exactly.
Sir Geoffrey, was the Prime Minister ever able to enlighten the committee as to more details around where these migrants would be housed?
Well, you've only got to look at his body language in that reply. Basically, what it amounted to was he didn't have a clue. And this is a disgrace because it's one of the key issues that worries all of our constituents. You know, where, if migrants were to come into their area, and they're coming into all of our constituencies, where are they going to be housed? Where are they going to be put? And what happened was, we've done a lot of work on this on our committee, was that the department made an awful bodge of trying to buy sites. Look at Scampton, look at North Eye, really botched that. They then had to put them into hotels. The number of people in the hotels had halved by the time of the election, but it's gone up again since the election. So the Prime Minister protesting that he doesn't want to put people in hotels are just really hollow words. What they need to do is purchase some of these large ex-military sites, build quickly the relevant accommodation so that there are accommodation on these places. They can get them out of hotels and stop worrying people in local communities. Look at what happened in Epping. That was really a disgrace. And we need to avoid that situation again.
At the Bell Hotel. So just to confirm, the Prime Minister did not provide you with the evidence that you requested at the liaison committee about the detail of where migrants will be housed. Is this a cover-up?
No. Well,
is it incompetence? Is it lying? What is it?
Well, it's a cover-up, Mark, in the sense that they have no clear policy to deal with it, and they haven't been taking the right steps. It's not that difficult to find ex-military bases, cost properly what sort of maybe you can use prefab housing, get the houses built quickly to house these migrants, and so really it's another example of this government not really getting to grips with a serious problem.
Sir Geoffrey, wonderful to see you, and I look forward to catching up in the very near future. Thank you for your valuable time. Sir Geoffrey Clifton-Brown is the Conservative MP for North Cotswold. That's quite extraordinary. The Prime Minister said he'd give further details of where and circumstances under which these migrants would be housed. The view of Sir Geoffrey is he didn't have a clue at the time, and now, given the fact that the information was not forthcoming, it feels like a cover-up. Well, we're being made mugs of, aren't we? We're being taken for fools by those who govern us. By the way, I'm a little bit sick of hearing about disused army bases and barracks and other solutions and closing the hotels. All right, this is a sideshow. We've got to focus on supply. Those boats have got to stop because it's every day upwards of 1,000 people. So until that's tackled, we will always have this problem. You're listening to Talk Breakfast. Who would you take over, I should say, would you take Trump over Starmer. Let me know your thoughts on that. We've got a voice note from Wayne on the ICE agency who are doing repatriation of illegal immigrants to the United States. Here's Wayne.
Good morning, Mark. Wayne, still dying of man flu, still working, still wish I could sign on. I digress, let's move on. So, with Trump in America and the ICE situation, I see passion. I have no problem with passion on the left and the right. Passion is a great thing. Passion works wonders. However, it's when that passion turns to aggression. You can't be classed as being passionate if you're attacking law enforcement. That's aggression. That's where we overstep the mark. Now, with the UK, we had the raising of the flags and we have the Pride of Britain march. That's passionate. Nothing wrong with that. I don't even mind these people protesting against Palestine. Again, it's passionate. But when they start attacking Jews, saying defamatory things, and then even the Palestine Action Group attacking a military plane, that becomes aggression too far. So this is the issue we have. Passion is not a problem, it's the aggression. I just wish our Prime Minister had either a passion or aggression and stop being this narcissistic little weasel that we have. Great show, buddy.
Thank you, Wayne, and not pulling your punches there. Fantastic voice note. So much more to come. Will you take Trump over Starmer? This is Talk Breakfast.
Breaking news this morning revealed that under the Terrorist Act, 242 people were arrested in the year to June of this year.
That's something you can indulge in as to all the people who aren't going to prison because, well, there's no prison spaces.
So this is a Talk exclusive we've been looking at.
I said, you take these cuffs off me and speak to me like a human being rather than a common criminal.
You're just left wondering, does these people who lead us actually hate Britain? Yeah. Do they not love our country and everything that we've stood for?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
9:27 Talk Breakfast. Mark Dolan with you until 10 a.m. Peter Cardwell up at 10. And I'm delighted to say I'm with you until Monday inclusive. So that is today, tomorrow, Sunday and Monday. Thank you for having me. Would you take Trump over Starmer? Here's a voice note from Andrew.
Morning, Mark. Andrew here from Weymouth in Dorset. Oh, all day long, Trump over Starmer. Trump believes in his country, fights for his country. You know, the things he's trying to do in America is bringing prices down. He loves the troops. Gas is coming down. He's standing up for it. He's standing for right. Immigration, what he's done with the borders, fantastic. What do we got? We got Keir Starmer. Weak-willed, faux outrage, all this fake outrage about the troops when he was responsible for doing his best to actually prosecute troops because of the ECHR. I mean, it's mind-boggling. And this trip to China, I mean, don't get anyone started. What a load of nothingness. Absolute nothingness.
Andrew, thank you for that. But this show is all about opinions, and Shirley begs to differ.
Good morning, Mark. It's Shirley from the Cotswolds. I'd just like to say no, I definitely don't want Trump as our leader, although he is better than Keir Starmer in many ways. But I definitely would keep the Republican Party, and the two people I would choose to lead it would be Marco Rubio first and Pete Hegseth second. Eye candy. Thanks, Mark. Have a lovely day. Bye.
Hi, Candy. I love that. But also, Shirley, I agree. I mean, those are pretty impressive politicians. I also like Ron DeSantis in Florida, who pushed back on the COVID madness. Quite a character he was. Now, listen, folks, we've got this very, very awful story, and it's quite devastating, actually. A baby has been born and is in a serious condition after being born, after the mother of this baby was pregnant, hit by an e-bike rider in a hit and run. Ollie Chadwick's got the story. He's the managing director at Naught Technology, manufactures as well as retails e-scooters. Ollie, what's the story here? Do you know what happened?
Morning, Mark. Well, first and foremost, our thoughts obviously with the woman and the baby involved. At the moment, it seems a little unclear. Obviously, it's an e-bike. Possibly two people on board, we don't know, and obviously have disappeared. So this really comes down to needing better regulation to prevent these sort of incidents happen, and if they do, there's some sort of trackability and accountability as there would be if an incident happened with a car.
Well, indeed. So we've got a pregnant woman, and she's hit by an e-bike, and she has the baby. So I understand the baby's okay, but still being monitored by medics, and we wish mum and baby well. Of course we do, and hopefully that one will be okay in the end. Is there a particular problem with these devices, these e-scooters and these e-bikes, which contain an electric motor and a battery?
Well, I think the problem isn't the e-scooter or the e-bike. Inherently, there's no problem with those. Unfortunately, it's the people that are using them at the moment. And there needs to be more responsibility and accountability by the riders. That's why we're pushing the government for better legislation. E-scooters have got this grey area where privates aren't legal at the minute. E-bikes have got legislation where they are legal with a capped motor of 250 watt and a speed limit. Now, we all know there are some that go quicker than that. Technically, that's actually an e-motorbike. But the government needs to bring in better regulation. Other parts of Europe and the wider world have done it. Parts of Germany, they have third-party insurance, and they have a little license plate on there. So in an incident like this, where in the article the police are sort of asking for any dash cam footage or CCTV, there would be some trackability and accountability.
So do you think that's what we need to do? Because this technology is not going anywhere, is it, Ollie? People find it very convenient. I've got no doubt your products are of the highest quality. So people enjoy the freedom and independence. They're environmentally friendly. Do you think that there should be number plates on these devices or obligatory insurance?
It's a difficult one. It's a balancing act. We don't want to over-regulate a market and then push people away from this innovative form of technology into getting back in their cars or on mopeds themselves. But the reality is there are, unfortunately, these small number of incidents. So if, like I say, reference Germany, for scooters, they've got a nominal liability insurance. So it's about $30 to €80 a year. Covers you if there's an incident, but also there's a license plate, and it's only for approved models. So it just helps control things a little better. We've been lobbying the government to do this, but they're sort of burying their head in the sand. There can be much better regulation on what retailers like us sell and bring into the country.
Ollie, notwithstanding that there are plenty of sensible people who will enjoy these devices and use them well, are they not more powerful than a normal bicycle? And does that not make them a hazard? And also, are you concerned that these devices have been adopted by criminals?
Well, the reality is that the approved one shouldn't be. There's a capped motor of 250 watt, and you only got the electric motor power up to 15.5 miles an hour. So, a fit young bloke could cycle faster than that anyway. The problem is there are some modified products, which technically are actually then e-motorbikes. That's where some regulation needs to come in. If they're only ever going to be used on private land, that's fine, but those things shouldn't be used on the road. As for criminals adopting and using them, I mean, where do you draw the line with that? Criminals use all forms of transport, cars. That's not necessarily the fault of the product. But again, if there is regulation around it, some trackability and accountability, that would help that aspect.
Ollie, thank you so much for joining us. Ollie Chadwick is the managing director at Nought Technology, that's NOUGHT Technology, who manufacture as well as retail e-scooters. So check out their website if you're interested. And of course, other manufacturers are available. What do you think about that? Do you worry about those e-bikes? I'm very excited because at 9:45, we're just going to power through all of your calls and voice notes and texts. I'll be devoting the last chunk of the show to you and your opinions. But next up, Labour on course for its worst election result in 116 years. Is it game over for Starmer? We'll speak to one of the finest polling experts in the land next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Full switchboard coming to your opinions in just 10 minutes' time. Would you take Trump over Starmer? This is Alan on a voice note.
Morning, Mark. Alan from Swansea, yeah. I take Trump over Starmer, absolutely. But then again, I take Mr. Bean over Starmer, pal. That bloke is absolutely inept in all he does on all his front bench. Oh, my goodness gracious. Something out of a Carry-On film. Keep up the great show, buddy. Ta-da.
Thank you, Alan. Dan in Halifax, yes, I would take Trump over Starmer anytime. Unfortunately, the last Prime Minister we had who was people and country first was Thatcher. She was not perfect, but you knew not to mess with her and you knew where you stood. OK, well, look, I'll get to more of your thoughts on that in just a moment. But developing this morning, Labour is on course for its worst results in an election in 116 years in May, as Scottish voters desert it, a new poll suggests, against a backdrop of a major dislike for Sir Keir Starmer. Anna Sarwar's party is on course to take just 15% of the vote in the Scottish parliamentary elections, with an electoral wipeout predicted across the country in those local elections as well. Let's get reaction now from Sir John Curtis, polling expert and professor of politics at the University of Strathclyde. Sir John, good morning. Welcome back to Talk Breakfast.
Good morning to you.
Just how bad could things get for Labour in May?
Well, certainly both Scotland and Wales look difficult for Labour in May. We've had, guys, you've just reported that poll from yesterday. Actually, to be honest, that poll didn't tell us anything we didn't already know. The average of 4 other polls in the last couple of months was Labour at 16 points. It was just a little bit worse for Labour than those polls. And it was a little bit better for Reform, so therefore clearly opening up the gap. The problem for Labour, both in Scotland and in Wales, is that the people who voted for Labour in 2024 are disenchanted with the party. They are disenchanted with Keir Starmer, and in Scotland in particular, Labour are finding that their support is going to reform in particularly high numbers, certainly higher than in England and in Wales. In Wales, of course, you just quoted, it could be the worst resort in Scotland for 118 years. It's also going to be the worst resort, potentially the worst resort in Wales for a similar period of time, because the party has been running third in the opinion polls. Labour has not lost an election in Wales by any definition since 1931. I think the one place where Labour might perhaps still have a degree of hope is in London. Now, London is where there are elections for all the London boroughs. That is somewhere where, yes, Labour's vote is well down as it is elsewhere. But because Labour are already so strong in London, London is Labour's strongest part of the UK these days. The most recent poll for London, done just before Christmas, still has Labour ahead in the city. Now, that doesn't mean to say it won't suffer losses, it will. But Labour does have an awful lot of safe wards in London. And unfortunately for the Greens, a lot of the places where the Greens are relatively strong, where they might well be hoping to challenge Labour, a lot of those wards where the Greens are second to Labour, that distance for the Greens to catch up is very substantial. So, it could still be bad news for Labour in London, but that perhaps might be just the one place where Labour don't do quite so bad, at least in terms of seats as opposed to votes, than maybe people are otherwise anticipating.
If Sir Keir Starmer is the likely loser in May, who is the likely winner? Mr Polanski, Mr Farage, Kemi Badenoch?
Depends on where you're talking about. Of course, in Scotland, it's the Scottish National Party, not because the Scottish National Party is particularly popular. Its support is down by a dozen points or so as compared with the last Scottish election in 2021. But because Labour's voters' support has fallen, and at least the SNP have held on to the voters who voted for them in 2024, they now have a large lead north of the border. In Wales, the problem is Plaid Cymru. Labour's vote is going very heavily to Plaid. Plaid at the moment seem to be in pole position to be the largest party and are certainly expected to take the First Minister position and to provide Wales with its next government. Within London, as already suggested, for most of London, this is not going to be particularly propitious territory for reform, because reform is very heavily dependent on those people who voted for Brexit, and London voted against Brexit. But maybe somewhere like Bromley, towards the outer London, reform might hope to maybe even pick up the council. I'd be looking outside of London. Essex must be one target for reform. It's the kind of territory where they did well in the county council elections last year. And I think we have to wait to see what happens in places like Barnsley and Sunderland, traditional Labour territory, but places that voted heavily for Brexit and where reform has shown a degree of form in the past. I think that's where reform could well be recording perhaps their most spectacular gains, and the ones that, in a sense, will cause Labour most grief.
Now, I know that long-term political predictions are a perilous sport at the best of times, Sir John, but looking beyond May and the next general election, if there were an election tomorrow, how much trouble would Labour be in? We know that the Tories would face electoral wipeout. Perhaps Nigel Farage might have a sniff at an overall majority. What about Labour? If there were an election tomorrow, a general election, could Sir Keir Starmer lose his seat?
That is certainly one of the forms of speculation. Certainly some of the recent polling that attempts to estimate the outcomes in seats has Labour looking at many fewer than 100 seats. And one of the things you discover if you look at that polling is that Labour's vote is falling above all in places that they're trying to defend. And of course, in particular, one of the problems that Keir Starmer has, as indeed also has Wes Streeting and another, Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, they're in constituencies with not inconsiderable numbers of people who identify as Muslim. They lost that community in large numbers in 2024 because of Labour's stance on Gaza, and there isn't any sign so far that that's been reversed. But the honest truth is that at the moment, if there were an election tomorrow the odds are that Reform would win and would win with an overall majority. Not that Reform are that popular. They're running at about 29% in the polls, and their numbers have been slowly slipping during the course of recent weeks. But because of the first past the post electoral system, and because Reform still have a large lead over everybody else, they could still end up with a very strong parliamentary representation inside the House of Commons. But at this point, we just have to say, it's 3 years to the next election. An awful lot of water has got to flow underneath an awful lot of bridges. Much could change in the meantime. But what is clear, both Labour and the Conservatives face a very considerable challenge if they're going to get back into the position, their historic position in the post-war era, of being the two parties that dominate our politics. We're now in a world of five-party minority politics, all very heavily fragmented. And we wait to see whether or not this is going to reverse or not.
Most definitely. Even Mystic Meg doesn't know what way that's going, does she, Sir John? Before we let you go, the immediate focus politically is the by-election in Gorton and Denton, which is just a few weeks away. And if I'm going to try to see inside your capacious brain, I think you'll be telling me, Sir John, that if Andy Burnham had been the Labour candidate, they would have held that seat. In his absence, they will not, perhaps. Is that right?
Perhaps is the correct rider to that statement. I think the truth is that there are a number of battles going on. I mean, the various estimates that are kicking around, including from recent MRP polls, is that Reform will start off at around the 30% mark, and that could be enough to win the seat. It really depends on what happens amongst those who are not willing to vote for Reform. It is a constituency with a relatively large number of Muslims. Labour's vote fell heavily in the constituency in 2024. But first of all, I think there's going to be a battle between the Greens and the Workers' Party as to see whether either of them could dominate the Muslim vote and get them on side. If the Greens can do that, and then can add to it, the voters of people from the more socially liberal parts of the constituency, then the Greens might end up being the Reform's principal challenger. Labour are hoping that doesn't happen, and that therefore they will be able to claim that they have got the best chance of defeating Reform. They're already trying to claim this, and that therefore, as a result, they'll be hoping to squeeze certainly some of those voters who might otherwise vote for the Greens, and Labour might hope to hang on to the seat. But I mean, I think we're looking at the moment at a constituency in which, at least at this point in time, there are four parties who potentially have a role to play in determining who wins the constituency.
A true legend of political analysis. Sir John, thank you for your valuable time. Sir John Curtis, polling expert and Professor of Politics at the University of Strathclyde. Would you take Trump over Starmer? This is Talk Breakfast.
Welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
That's Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCounts.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Suits. That's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beers, and I feel
raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of this desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk Across the
9:47 Talk Breakfast. Would you take Trump over Starmer? Anne is in Devon. Good morning, Anne.
Good morning. I would like to ask why these illegal immigrants are not confined to barracks sort of thing when they are put in army barracks to relieve the worry from the people of the towns and villages that they're going to inhabit.
I completely agree with you, Anne. I cannot believe that people that enter the country illegally are not detained. I mean, you could use the word imprisoned, but certainly kept within the boundaries of a government property so that they cannot pose a risk to locals.
I totally agree with that, yes.
I know, and then, you know, you get it, I get it. I mean, it can't be complicated. I don't even know, Anne, why it's controversial.
Well, I don't know why we have to worry about our safety, because it should be mandate to do this.
Most definitely. Essentially, Anne, you've broken the law if you've entered the country illegally. And if you broke the law, Anne, and were a regular shoplifter or some other criminal, you'd be apprehended.
Yes. Yes.
And what do you make of what's happened to the country?
I'm not happy with this. I do worry about it now. I worry for the youngsters. We have got a spineless jelly as a leader who likes to suck up to other countries. He doesn't look after his own people. I think he's a coward. And the sooner he's gone, the better.
Anne, thank you for a very important call, and I wish you well. Do call me again soon. Enjoyed our short but excellent conversation. I'm going to go rapid fire through all of your calls as Sholape's worked her magic once again. I've got a full switchboard. Linda is in Dorset. Good morning, Linda.
Good morning. Hi. Yeah, Trump. I know he's a sort of a loose cannon now and again.
Yeah.
But the difference is he's removing illegals from his country. And we have people like that, Sir Jeffrey, whoever he was, saying, let's build prefab houses for our illegals. I mean, there's your massive difference, isn't it?
It's true, because actually I should have taken Sir Jeffrey up on that, because building more accommodation misses the point. They shouldn't be here in the first place.
No, I mean, I've been waiting on council. I live in Weymouth as well.
Yeah.
I've been waiting on the council list for years now. I'm 74, got health problems. And you phone them up, we've got 5,000 on the waiting list. And yet I see other people getting places, and it makes me so angry.
And you've paid into this country all your life. You're a British citizen, Linda.
I've looked after people with special needs and learning difficulties all my life. And when I was 17 with MenCap, and this is how I feel as if I'm treated as a non-entity, really.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I hear a lot, Linda, is that many of my viewers and listeners feel like a second-class citizen in their own country.
Yeah. And every morning I wake up and I think, oh, my God, what's Starmer done now? Dare I look on the news? Because it's becoming I just can't believe it. I'm so glad I'm the age I am, because there's not much more to go in this country, is there? I mean, it's buggered, isn't it?
Well, I do worry sometimes that it's done. I always keep hope. Apologies for Linda's language, but I share her anger. Linda, so you got your health issues. So what exactly do you need that you're not getting? Is it accommodation?
Yeah, simply because of health reasons.
Yeah. And you've got a 5-year waiting list?
That's what they say, yes. No, there's 5,000 people on the waiting list.
5,000 people on the wait. I mean, that's not coming down anytime soon, is it?
Well, no. No, not at all.
And what's your current accommodation? It's not appropriate, I'm guessing.
No. I mean, I've got somewhere lovely to live, but it's got stairs, and I'm getting to the point I can't do stairs.
No.
So, yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Linda, it's listen, my heart goes out to you, and I hope that this is resolved swiftly, because you should be at the front of the queue. Because, Linda, we often complain about Welfare Britain. Well, if you can't get up the stairs, you're entitled to accommodation which is on the ground floor. That is your right. And that's why we pay our taxes, Linda. That's what the welfare state is for. And you mentioned helping people her whole life. MENCAP, disabled, handicapped people, and now she gets no help from her own government. David is in Gloucestershire. Good morning, David.
Good morning, Mark. How are we all?
I'm very well. Top of the morning to you. Happy Friday. What do you... I think you're calling about the WASPy women. Now, the issue is that the Tories, these are pensioners who argue they were not informed of the levelling out of the retirement age to 65 for men and women. They were not able to plan for that. There's a massive shortfall for many, which is shocking and terrible. The Tories said they weren't going to pay up, but Labour pretended they would.
Well, this was my very point. Why I rang up was there was Angela Rayner with you played a little clip of her saying, "Oh, it was absolute disgraceful that that they were promised everything and blah blah blah." Well, I think the blimmin' Labour Party are blimmin' disgrace because they promised everything to everybody and have basically turned their backs on everybody.
Well, they definitely did. I mean, that's the WASPy women. I think it's about 3.5 million, 3.6 million women there, David, who may have voted Labour thinking that Labour had their back, right? But hold the line, because I've got a message from Carol in Clacton, who says, "Good morning, Mark. I was listening to your interview about the WASPy women, of which I am one." She says, "I lost over £35,000 by the government changing the retirement age. 35 grand. She says, "I was one of 4 women who worked nights in a residential care facility for the elderly. 3 of us lost our husbands before they were 65. So the government didn't have to pay their pensions. And obviously there were lots of men who die before pension age. Awful government." Carol there has suffered massively, David.
Well, you just said there's 3.5 million people. I could use one word, starts with P and ends in off. But, they've done them. They've done the farmers. They've now done the military. They've done pensioners. Who is exactly going to vote for them?
The work-shy and immigrants.
Yeah, but that's it. That's it, and I know that's why. This is why I think this is why this is the real reason why they keep importing people and making more and more people. But it's just an absolute blooming disgrace.
David, you are so right. Listen, you speak for millions. Call me again soon, David. I'd love to chat for longer, but we're going to power through calls because we've got a full switchboard.
Love it.
Barry's in Norwich. Top of the morning, Barry.
Good morning, Mark. How are you?
Very well. I think you'd like to call about the BBC.
Yes.
It turns out now a majority of the public have had enough of woke box ticking and diversity being rubbed in their faces on the BBC. What do you think?
I agree with you. I don't pay a TV licence. I haven't paid a TV licence in years. I won't pay. Well, I don't watch it, so I don't pay for it. I believe if it's that great, then people should make a subscription channel, and people who want to watch it will pay for it. People who don't want to watch it don't know how to pay for it.
Barry, why did you stop watching the Beeb?
Because it's just garbage, mate, to be honest with you.
Right, so low quality?
Yeah, just no interest, nothing interesting on there. I mean, it's all, like you say, it's all full of diverse, they're making characters on programmes that were white and now black, do you know what I mean? Yeah, right. Yeah. When they're not, and I find it quite insulting to black people that they even do that.
Well said.
And I just don't watch it no more.
Well, these diversity policies, very ironically, that they are patronising to people of colour, and they, in their own way, are arguably racist.
Yeah, that's what I say. I mean, so, I just don't watch it no more, mate. There's plenty of channels on there like Talk to watch. There you go.
Well, Barry, we're really honoured that you do that. I do not take your time and your attention for granted. It's the greatest privilege to be on the radio and on the telly, and we're here to serve you and get your opinions on the national broadcast airwaves. Barry, thank you for that call. Keep it talk if you can. Neville's in Norfolk. Hello, Neville.
Hello, good morning, Mark.
Neville, can you talk to us about these cancelled elections? I mean, I don't mind spending a bit of money on an election for an administration that's around for a year. I think they should always be accountable.
Well, they should be accountable, and the price of democracy, apparently, according to our glorious Conservative Council leader, who I'd like to name and shame on nationwide radio, is 3 or 4 councillors who have had the good sense to say they would stand down so as to allow for a by-election and to allow democracy. She's tried to shame them by saying, oh, well, they shouldn't be doing that because it costs £25,000 to hold a by-election. Well, if that's the price of democracy, considering what the council waste normally, I think that's disgusting.
Well, totally. And Neville, the Conservatives have completely lost the moral high ground on this one, given the fact that they're cancelling elections as well, as you've pointed out.
Well, they're just as complicit as Labour in all of this.
Why do you think that Labour have cancelled these elections? Is it really because of a changing map?
No, it's because they're scared.
And what are they scared of,
and
Neville?
Look at Starmer. Where's he been? One of his favourite political ideologies, dictatorships, and that's what he is, and that's what they are, and they need removing.
Neville, what a treat to have you on the show, not pulling your punches. Of course, the government will be very clear that they were elected with a strong mandate, that they inherited a broken economy, broken public services, and what they're doing now is settling on fixing the foundations of this country, getting the economy growing, stopping the boats and tackling the issues facing this country. Labour will argue that they will get it right, they're going to get it right, and of course it's all about opinions, so there'll be plenty of those in 2 minutes' time when Peter Cardwell takes to the airwaves. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning, sir. I've just found some vegan lipstick here just beside the desk. I just wondering, is it yours?
It's not mine, and I just want to say to you that I think it makes you look very cheap.
That's good. You don't do vegan lipstick. You do fully meaty.
Well, I tell you,
it hasn't got animal products on it. You're not interested.
Unless a seal has been harmed, I won't wear it. And what I will say to you is, vegan lipstick, I can assure you, it does not belong to Julia Hartley-Brewer.
Right. Yeah. Well, yes. I think we can
or
probably
Alex Phillips.
Surmise that. Yeah.
I mean, Ian Collins, 50-50.
50-50. You're just reminded of Alan Partridge when he's playing the music and he goes, "Keep your clubs away from his young. It's Seal."